Today, me and Zin are sat down with a couple of ex-Star Citizen employees who are willing to talk to us about their project and their time at Cloud Imperium. It's not going to be anything groundbreaking or like, got 'em, but it's hopefully going to be interesting nonetheless. Wiley, let's start with you. Who are you, and what did you do for Cloud Imperium?
My name is Wiley. I was a concierge support specialist for CIG. I worked out of the Austin studio within the player relations department.
And Witchcraft, who are you, and what did you do for Cloud Imperium?
My name's Witch. I took on a couple of roles at that company. So I was a senior animator, I was a in-house motion capture performer, and I established and enforced metrics in the early stages of the project.
Before we go on to any other questions, I was talking to you a little bit about this before, Which, what do you mean by you helped establish metrics for the company?
Let's say you got 7 or 8 different cockpit types. 7, I believe, right? We're the initial, right? You have like the Yoke W, dual stick, HOTAS CL, HOTAS RL. So for like the Yoke W, what would happen is you'd have the 300i would have the Yoke W sitting in a certain position over the character, right? But then on the Freelancer, which is a Yoke W, it'd be a little bit higher, a little bit wider. So each ship, unfortunately, would change. And what was happening was, if you look at the animation footprint for the cockpits, it's hundreds of animations for the player to be able, or NPC to be able to like drive and have G-lock and black out and eject and hit all of those buttons. They had all these different size seats and all these different size controls. And I was like, wait a minute. So I counted, I was like, instead of having 7 different standard cockpit types, they had something like 27. So I basically presented a animation footprint metric chart to Chris Robertson. Basically said, if you want to have hundreds or thousands or however many players you want in the game, bandwidth is still going to be an issue. Animation footprint size is not, it's finite, right? It's going to have a cost. So if we go ahead and just wing this is how many animations you're going to have in the game. Hypothetically, let's say it's just 100 ships fighting, right? This is how many animations you're going to have versus if we lock down now and we standardize. So it went from something like 40,000 animations, bespoke animations, down to like 4,000, And Chris saw the numbers and went, we're going to go with that. After that, I wrote a playbook basically with my lead and basically said, look, it's not only going to be important for this, but it's also going to be, the metrics are going to be really important for all usables, cargo units. We're going to have to get all of that stuff established before we build any of these ships. Because if you don't pay attention to this stuff and then you build a ship, it's possible that you might discover, oh shoot, it's not, the ship's not big enough, or it's too narrow, or it's not, because it doesn't fit everything, right?
Out of curiosity, around when was this?
This proposal, or everything that I'd laid out, was back in 2014.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense.
So, and eventually, what you're seeing now, like, what's the newest cargo ship that just came out?
Rylan.
The Rylan, thank you. So you can see, now you could see all of, that they're like really paying attention to all the metrics. They're learning, like CIG, has learned a couple of years back. They're like, yeah, we can't just go out the gate and wing this stuff. The other thing that was interesting too was, there was a little bit of resistance at the beginning. I think there were artists that I would go and talk to and some leads where they were like, I think the quote was, I don't want to be inhibited by my creativity, and I think that the metrics is going to restrain me. And I think the best angle, the best pitch that I had for that was to say, hey, look, I'm going to give you something. It's a template. If you could just follow these small areas right here, this like little bubble, just work to the metric in here. Everything outside of that bubble, you can go to town on. You could put pistons, tentacles, whatever you want. No one's going to come back to you and say, sorry, this doesn't work with motion capture, or sorry, this doesn't work with our technical animation or any of the character animation. And at the same time, for the animation side, they can animate thousands or hundreds of thousands of animations to this template and never have to come back. I think probably the best example and probably the most challenging example of metrics working for cockpits is the Banu Defender, and that was Josh Kuhn's ship that he built, and it was really challenging because it's an extremely organic design. but the results, I mean, if you look at it, are pretty breathtaking. So that was a really long answer. I'm really sorry. So
No, that was great. It's interesting to hear how there was unified metrics proposed relatively early on, but still not at the start, which is odd, or at least I don't know. But there was obviously some resistance to it as well from artists that wanted to go crazy with their ideas or not have it restrain their freedom. I think that was good to know.
to be fair, I mean, that's a pretty universal thing that I found in most AAA studios, and you won't always get your way on it. I'm glad that I was in the right place at the right time with my lead to help kind of get that going in the right direction. And to CR's credit, probably maybe a year after I'd been working support on all of that stuff, they hired a full-time specialist and that's just his job, is to police the metrics. And that was great for me because then I could actually go focus on the job that I was originally hired for, which was animation and motion capture performance.
Wiley, obviously you've been working on or had worked on concierge customer service support stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So what was that like? What did you do like on a day-to-day for the project for that?
So most of my tasking was just dealing with these concierge support requests that came in. During my time there, as the concierge sort of continued to evolve as concierge agents, right? We had the most kind of direct line to the customer. And so we knew what people were asking for. We kind of had a handle on what they wanted. And so we actually were brought into discussions on how to continue to shape that policy and how to continue to adjust things like the chairman's club, the concierge experience as a whole, to continue to add value to it from the perspective of the customer. Most of my tasking day to day was answering tickets, handling special requests, and just making sure people got what they needed and made sure they were happy. And a lot of times it involved some compromise with what they were asking. Sometimes it involved flat out saying no, unfortunately. A lot of really good interactions there.
Did you have any sort of crazy requests? Obviously, I know you can't probably name specifics, but anything crazy?
There's a consistent one I got, which was always came in the form of, hey, I need you to tell Chris Roberts this. Like I had a red phone on my desk, right, that I could reach over and pick up and say, hey, Chris, so-and-so wants XYZ. I had channels that I could escalate stuff, but I never had a way that I could say, make sure Chris Roberts sees this, I think it really speaks to this company and how it differs from a lot of other companies is that, CIG is run by a guy who does a lot of the work, and not just from an administrative or an executive level, but he's got programming and coding experience and has built games with his hands, so to speak, in the past. And he's an extremely busy guy, man. Even if I had a direct line to him, I doubt he would have ever wanted to hear from me in terms of that kind of stuff, right?
How much focus did CIG put on concierge? Are they going, look, these guys are the backbone of the game, help them out, make sure they get what they want because they're spending the money? Or was it not like that?
Well, it evolved during the time I was there. So when I was hired, I started work in August of 2017. So we had a set of kind of standing orders, right, and policies. And as the player base grew, we had to kind of figure out a way to standardize those requests because they started coming in just in leaps and bounds more and more. And so a lot of what we did involved kind of bringing in new policies that we felt would add value and sort of phasing out old ways of doing things that didn't really make any sense anymore. Concierge, when I was hired on, I think by the end of my first year, we had 5 people just dedicated to just concierge. What I found was that the number of requests that came from concierge backers specifically, as opposed to just the standard backer population as a whole, I think you had a higher proportion, right? So on average, you were getting more requests from concierge. I think CIG really did recognize that and did kind of take care of those people, make sure they were happy, make sure they felt that they were getting the proper attention that they needed, while also protecting and maintaining a certain level of autonomy is not the right word, but still protecting kind of the interests of the business.
So a question to sort of both of you. What was it like working at Cloud Imperium? Was it mostly enjoyable?
It was great.
Yeah.
So he and I both worked in the Austin studio. I visited the Los Angeles studio at one point. I spent 2 days there, and so that wasn't enough time for me to get a feel for kind of the work culture there. But as speaking just towards Austin, it was great. I still missed the job just for the people that I was around and got to work with every day. really good work culture in the Austin studio when I was there. Obviously, I haven't worked there for a couple years, but when I was there, just no complaints. I love those guys.
Yeah, I would say the same thing, man. I mean, the thing is, working in the games industry, there's really only a handful of places where I've really had just a super tight bond with, with my teammates. In Austin, especially, just I don't know why this is the case, but if we said, okay, we're going to work on this thing now. We announced, like, we're going to work on this feature, whatever it is, and it was really cool because there was a buzz about it, and everybody just kind of say, okay, I'm going to do the best I can on this, but at the same time, when I get done with this, if I'm taking a break, I'm looking over at my, the guy next to me or the team across the hall and making sure that they're okay. If those guys are tired, exhausted, I'm getting donuts. I'm bringing it to them. If those guys, at the same time for me, like if I've been burning for 3 days straight or 2 weeks of crazy crunch, I'd always have somebody come over and be like, hey man, I'm just checking on you. How you doing? Can I get you anything? And it wasn't like a producer coming to do that, which I did have producers that would do that. No, I just have coworkers that would come over, and rarely do I have that at other studios. I think maybe in my 20-year career, maybe there might be 2 studios that I could say that compare to that.
So tell me more of this crunch. What was the crunch like at Cloud Imperium?
So for concierge and PR as a whole, crunch time was always around sales. And so it was interesting in that PR had usually a little bit of a delay. So if the rest of the company was, working and prepping for an event, right, or for the anniversary sale, as an example, right, or a build release that comes with sales, the rest of the company would go through that work. Artists, animators, all the assets would get built. Those guys would do what they needed to do. Platform would get everything set on their side, and then there was always a little bit of a delay. So PR was kind of towards the middle end, right? When people hit the website heavy, were buying ships, exchanging ships, buying CCUs, and needed stuff changed or adjusted. Most of the time during crunch, that was what we dealt with, was just people saying, hey, I made a mistake. I bought Warbond and I wanted to use credit. Things like that.
But from your perspective, crunch wasn't sort of like this terrible experience where you felt mega drained. It was just hard work for a period of time.
Yeah, it was hard work, but kind of the perspective I remember, at least within my circles in my department, taking was that it would be, a month to the anniversary sale. And we'd be like, okay, get ready, right? We're getting ready to climb this mountain together.
Yep.
And, it was kind of this task that was a team effort, and concierge and sort of standard PR were technically kind of different teams, but we were one department. We were all really close and backed each other up.
Very much so.
Which you were saying that you actually had quite good experiences and team members coming to check on you and stuff during crunch. So can you explain just briefly what it was like with the crunch there then?
I think to add to what Wiley is saying is that because it's live release and it's almost sort of an assembly line of plan, send, react. This is the reason why people would come by and why I would go over to other. If your head's down and you've got to hit a milestone. Let's say I've got a patch that's coming out. I want to have an implementation for one of the shopkeepers or a ship commercial or something like that. I'd have to go through, and in some cases, just because of we're not aware of how much work it's going to be, or we run into like a technical challenge with like the engine or something, you're putting 8-10 hours a day in. But then there's other times where if you get caught on something, you have to keep up because it's a live release, it's going out, So there'd be some cases where like, oh man, shoot, this is, I've got to do this, or I might get double loaded. Like I might have to work on a mission giver or a shopkeeper or something like that, or some mechanic. But then also there might be another department that needs help, because I'm a performer and I'm a motion editor. I might, also get double tasked to go and help out on a ship commercial. And I'd always get the option to say, look, can you do it? Can you not? And there's some projects where I'm like, no, oh hell no. I'm working extra hours because I really want to work on like the carrot commercials. Like I really want to work on that. So I want to get this task done so that I can also work on this task, I'd get done with my delivery, I'd kick it out the door. Sometimes I'd catch myself because I come running into like QA or player relations. So I kind of like, high five everyone, and I forget that now it's it's their job. Now they're in crunch, they're working hard. They might be hurting a little bit, and so at that point I go, okay, all right, hey guys, what can I do to help out while you guys are doing your thing, And then same thing for me. They would know what I'd be going through, and it'd kind of come full circle,
What I noticed is that the studio would come together kind of as the result, or to see the result
Yes.
of that crunch, right? We would all gather either in one of the boardrooms or one of the side rooms to watch those keynote presentations that Chris gave. It was the best.
And I mean, I've never heard a group actually yelling and screaming at for a live release. We're like, come on. And then at work, we're like, yeah, it's a SpaceX launch every single time.
Yep.
Okay, that must be pretty good for morale, I suppose. What do you more generally both think of the Star Citizen project? It is a game, it is a development.
I love it.
When the Imagine trailer first came out, one of the top comments on the video was the world's first quadruple A game. It was funny, right? But that's kind of how I think about the project, is that it is this next step in gaming and what games are capable of becoming, right? And so the trend, over the last several years has been, okay, better and better graphics, cooler physical effects, different features and refinements of, kind of new ways of playing, modes like, the Battle Royale bloom that's happened over the last several years. But what CIG is doing, no one has ever attempted before. Not on this scale, not with this level of fidelity, right, that magic word, and not with this kind of ambition. And so I'm very excited to have been a part of it and to continue to monitor its progress.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, to add to what Wiley's saying, I mean, no one's doing anything like this to this scale. And yes, I mean, the industry has been in sort of a cookie cutter. This is kind of all AAA games are these sets of templates. This project is the one that I have always wanted to work on. Back in like 1977, I was like watching Star Wars, and when they get on board the Millennium Falcon, and as a kid, I remember like, God, man, you can go anywhere in that thing. If I had something like that, to be able to explore a big, wide universe. Every time I would see a video game, especially ones that had to do with space exploration, the first game to really give me that sort of sense of, man, like that journey was Chris Roberts' Wing Commander.
Do you have any worries or concerns about the project?
It's not so much a worry or a concern about the project itself or its ability to come to fruition. But the reason that Witch and I are continuing to play it and interact with the community, right, and speak to you is that I see a lot of misconceptions within, not so much within the community itself, but from the outside within the project as a whole. People think it's never going to come out. People, they say different things, right? Different kind of sensationalist news articles come out about the project. But I feel like once you get someone in the game and kind of give them the reins a little bit, and because there's a little bit of learning curve, but once you teach someone how to play the game and they get a taste of it and of the potential, most of the time they're all in, man. Like they can't wait, right? And so I'm looking forward to when the naysayers, and I think every patch that comes out, it's getting more and more unreasonable to call the project vaporware or to call it a scam.
For me, like, I guess, yeah, I think misinformation is becoming less and less of an issue. I think for the project itself, they fought a lot of battles to figure out, how to make this game and how to work as a company and as separate teams in order to be able to pull it off, right? And how best to interact with the community. Not perfect, but it's far better than it was, and in comparison to other situations. I mean, they're definitely going in the right direction. But for me, well, Wiley and I were talking about this, and the two hurdles I think that we're nervously waiting for, and that's server meshing and iCache. But here's the thing. We're all going to be in a room together watching this thing when it goes. But there's a failsafe. The thing that gives me comfort is that even if it does fail on launch, the way CI has set this up is that they have the ability to correct it. That's the biggest difference between CI's release model and traditional AAA developers. Once it went out, I mean, that's it, except for maybe a couple of like supplementary patches, but you release something that's got an abysmal review, that's it. I always felt really guilty about it. But on this project, developers have the ability to kind of go back, and they can go back and actually make something better.
Okay, well that's really good to know, and I'm sort of very pleased by your positive attitudes about working for the company and some of the stuff you see. That's genuinely great to hear, because that gives me a lot of confidence. But something that doesn't give people confidence is the sort of Cloud Imperium hit pieces and more anti-Star Citizen hit pieces that we've heard about in the past. Employees in Texas forced to work during a snowstorm, Star Citizen's toxic work environment, the notorious Forbes article. Do any of these or some of these hold any form of weight in your opinion? Or is it sort of like maybe, but not that you've experienced? Anything ring true with any of that?
Why, let's just break these down piece by piece. And they're really good questions.
Which one do you want to start with?
Let's talk about the snowpocalypse.
Okay.
Me personally, I live 7 minutes down the road from CIG. And I can tell you for our counties, it was a very bad situation. No water, no power. I mean, it was really, really bad. But in my interactions with, CIG coworkers, I was checking. I was like, hey, are you guys doing okay over there? How's it going? I never heard any complaints about anyone being forced to go back to work. I've known these guys long enough that I can tell if something's bothering them or not, and I didn't get any of that vibe. So I don't know where that came from.
Did the studio have power? Because if it was a blackout, across the area, I'm not sure how they could work, right?
I believe the article had implied, at the very least, that the studio had power, but I mean, maybe it didn't.
Mike Jones is a power supply.
He is, right?
He is.
To touch on what Witch said, obviously I wasn't working there at the time. I'm still good friends with a lot of people that work in that studio, and I didn't hear anything like that. From the way I was treated when I worked in the Austin studio, for them to force that would be extremely out of character for management. When I first saw that allegation, I didn't think it was true for a second.
And is that this sort of similar situation with the other sort of what I would deem hit pieces that you've heard as well, or Star Citizen's toxic work environment? From what you've said, that seems to not really be the case.
Yeah, the toxic work environment thing is interesting because I think there are plenty of examples of that within the industry as a whole. And I think sometimes the assumption, right, or that association gets unfairly attributed to CIG. I know that when I was working there with the position that I had and the time that I worked there, I was treated very well. I don't have any complaints about management, the way I was treated, the company's interactions between CIG and myself, they were great. And so I'm type 1 diabetic. Sometimes I have medical stuff that comes up, and that was never an issue with them. They were very understanding. Yeah, I have nothing but good things to say about my interactions with CIG from an employee standpoint.
Yeah, Wiley perfectly said it.
And my fellow employees as well, right? Because that's the other part of a toxic work environment is just the whole culture is just a problem, right? It's seething. And in the Austin office, I can tell you that is not the case at all.
What about these articles and potentially sapping morale? So when you were working there, did you hear about any of them? Were people pretty down about them, or did they just ignore them and not care?
I think it differed. Whenever Kotaku came out with something, it got to the point where we took it in our stride, like we expected it almost. Like, oh, it was a pattern. Kotaku is bashing Star Citizen. Big surprise. What are you having for lunch, right? The Forbes article was interesting, but I think that as a whole, it didn't cause any huge amount of unrest in the studio. I do think that it might have, those things would have affected different people individually.
Yeah, I was a gentle snowflake. And so whenever I would accidentally come across Kotaku or whoever else is throwing salt on the gamer misinformation, I get super depressed about it because I'm killing myself trying to make something. And, it was really easy to go over and talk to player relations or QA, and they'd be like, no, dude, here. And, they kind of talk me through it. I'm like, all right, okay. So it took me a while, but I had to learn to just kind of just turn it all off. In the 20 years that I've worked in film and television and game, I have definitely worked with con artists and people that you can smell BS a mile away, or you have it and you learn about it. You're like, okay, watching for this. And trust me, when I got in this company, I was definitely like, all right, I'm going to take this with a grain of salt, and I'm just going to take all this in and see if this is really what it is. And what I'm here to say is it's legit. It's
interesting that in this question, you mentioned scam, vaporware, and feature bloat, air quotes, kind of in one encompassing question. And I think the addition of features is a counter indicator or a counter to the scam and vaporware argument, right? I would say if CIG was making the game that was outlined in the original Kickstarter pledge, after having made, what are we at, 350 million now? That would be something that would be suspicious and would be worthy of being complained about. And, the case could be easier made that it's a scam, he's just taking money. But no, the game has grown as appropriate to its funding.
Yeah.
And, if it's a scam, it's the worst run scam in the history of of digital media, right? Like, and the feature bloat thing is interesting in that I don't feel as though a lot of the stuff that's been announced really, or that's come out recently is feature bloat. I feel like it's the fulfillment of early promises and early intentions, or they're features that support kind of larger loops.
Well, let's break that down. So let's say like Area 18, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember Area 18 originally was going to be a canned landing. Once you got to a certain height, you kind of just fly down and you'd land in a fixed spot, and that was it. But then as the technology started to get better in the game, and as things started to evolve, they realized, okay, wait a minute, we could actually give them some of this stuff. No, they're not going to be able to land on every single building in Area 18 and have stores, and that would be ridiculous. But now they have it so because of the existing sister tech and surrounding tech, now they can say, okay, well, you know what? Yeah, I can't land on every single building, but yeah, maybe we can actually, if we're landing on planets, well, yeah, maybe we can actually afford to have someone land at a landing zone. Let's figure that out. How does that work?
What could Cloud Imperium do to improve? Cloud Imperium could do this to improve quite significantly, either their development, either Star Citizen, their work environment, whatever.
That's a good question.
Very good.
So if you'd have asked me a year and a half ago, I would have said that the roadmap needs some love, right?
Fair one.
In a big way, right? I really like the changes they've made, right? And the increased visibility and the increased layout, and you're getting so much more information now with the changes that have been made. I like that they put stuff on there that isn't announced yet, that it's unannounced, it's coming, here's what we're working on, it's what these teams are accountable for, but you're gonna see it later,
It's difficult because there have been things that have bothered us in the past that we've been like, oh, great, they're doing it now. They're learning on their own, or they're reacting to the feedback from either employees or fans.
Something good that they've done, another thing that retrospectively I would have said, but has kind of recently come to light, is this emphasis and focus and work on additional gameplay loops. Refueling, medical, salvage. Those are big. And I think what CIG really needs to do is follow through on those and make sure that the Tier 0 maybe isn't perfect, maybe isn't the final product, but is workable and functions in game.
Finding a way to get out game features, more gameplay content. Seems like be the biggest.
Yeah. I think another big hurdle that I think will be a huge win for CIG, and this is going to be obvious, is getting Squadron 42 out.
Yeah, they got to get that out for sure.
That's a big one.
They're fighting two battles.
Yeah, short to mid-term, that's probably one of the biggest wins they could have, actually.
Out of curiosity from you two, even if it is just purely a prediction, how long do you think it's going to be before we see Star Citizen, the Persistent Universe, or Squadron 42 on the shelf?
Oh, that's a tough one, man. I mean, it's those three things, right? Gameplay, iCache, and server meshing. I mean, I don't know if I could give a date on that, because it really depends on if it works smoothly, it'll come out sooner. If it falls down and goes boom, then they're going to have to rework it.
It's a habit that's left over from working in player relations, right? Is like, we did get those when questions a lot, and it was just, don't make a prediction, right? Because I'm PR, I'm not qualified, and anything I say is...
I'm not qualified. I had a damn good guess at predictions.
Yeah. So even good guesses it's a little bit like construction, residential construction, right? Regardless of what amount of prep you do, what your blueprints are, and what your budget is, and your timeline, construction or houses always go over time, and they always go over budget without fail. These are for things people are working on building that aren't as complicated as a video game, that already have a set blueprint of what they're supposed to be. I think I'm going to refrain from throwing a date out so I can sleep tonight.
Amazing. thanks very much for joining me for that. Thank you very much, Wiley. Thank you very much, Witch.
Our pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was more than appreciated. That was longer than I expected, but certainly in actually pretty awesome way. Anything else quick that you wanted to say as a sign-off or anything?
Love the community. Love CIG.
Yeah, same here.
Hey, I heard you like VPNs. How about NordVPN then? It's got things like security and features, and we all know chicks dig VPNs. Oh my god, is that Nord? Well, yes. Yes, it is. Wink. Check out the links below to get discounts, or go to nordvpn.com/BoredGamer. Maybe it will align your chakras or something. Actually, let's read some testimonials. Ever since I got NordVPN, my life is good. I wish I'd got NordVPN sooner. I didn't get NordVPN and now I've got no hands. I'm sorry that I recorded this as an ad-sin. I apologise to my editor. I said I wouldn't go too wacky. That's not what's happened here. Every month we have a ship giveaway, and for July it's for a Constellation Taurus with lifetime insurance and a Star Citizen game package. All you need to play! This long overdue, more cargo-focused version of the Constellation is going to be flyable in July. It's basically a new ship. Woo! Sort of. To be in for a chance of winning that, comment on any of my videos made during July, and each video gives you another chance to win, but only one comment is counted per video. More details down below. Please also consider supporting the channel further via the YouTube join button, or via Patreon, or donation, or whatever. It all helps us make Star Citizen content. Great Star Citizen content, hopefully, or at least some Star Citizen content. Also, you should bother the bell and like and subscribe and all that sort of jazz as well. Thanks for watching.